Hello science fans, and welcome to a special episode of SHE-ensya. What is the gender spectrum? Is there any science to its existence? Why do we celebrate Pride Month? And why is representation across the gender spectrum important in STEM and in other communities? And while we're asking, let's hear from experts, students, and aspiring STEM advocates about what it's like to be part of the wonderful world of STEM. Join us in today's episode as we talk about the importance of the recognition of the gender spectrum within the scientific community and beyond, and talk to Sheroes who've turned their passion into action. The gender spectrum is an understanding that gender is not binary, but rather a spectrum of biological, mental, and emotional traits that exist along a continuum. On the other hand, the gender binary or gender binarism or genderism is a classification system that considers only two opposite sexes, male and female, and that no overlaps occur in between. Unfortunately, even though it is more popular, gender binaries is not scientifically or medically accurate. Today, many scientific fields from endocrinology, physiology, genetics, and neuroscience have shown data that sex and gender exist as a spectrum for both humans and other animal species. Now, when using the terms sex and gender, it is important to note that sex describes biological traits. In contrast, gender is a much broader term used to describe how a person lives within society. One's gender identity could be man, woman, transgender, non-binary, or an infinite number of possibilities. Now, sex characteristics tend to be bimodal, meaning there are clusters of characteristics that tend to be associated with people that we call female or male. For example, on average, males have the XY chromosomes while females have the XX chromosomes. But did you know that there are 16 other potential naturally occurring combinations of the sex chromosomes? And so bimodal is a better description because it means the presence of two statistical modes, which can be seen as peaks in a graph. The two modes represent probability clusters. So what this means is that some sex characteristics may appear more commonly in individuals that we describe as male or in individuals that we describe as female. But there will be overlaps with each of these two clusters. And that's what makes sex categorization in humans bimodal rather than binary. Of course, some would argue that our ability to make sex cells, such as sperm and egg cells, makes sex a clear duality. After all, only males can produce sperm cells and only females can produce egg cells. And there is no intermediate type of gamete or sex cell that combines the sperm and the egg together. However, it is also worth noting that not all individuals are capable of producing sperm and egg cells. And if we limit the categorization of our sex based on our ability to produce either sperm or egg cells, would that then mean that we have a subpopulation of humans that are sexless because they are incapable of producing either of these cells? And so biology has started to consider additional markers beyond our sex organs and chromosomes in defining biological sex. And these can be expanded to include our hormone levels at each developmental stage and the sensitivity of our hormone receptors. It can also include our brain structure and brain activity, and also our gene expression. And just to share one interesting study published last May 2018 by the European Society of Endocrinology, where the brain was used as a biological marker for sex by doing MRI scans on 160 transgender youth and were analyzed using a technique called diffusion tensor imaging. The results of the study was groundbreaking because what it showed was that the brain activity and structure of transgender boys were more similar to the structure and activity of cisgender boys. And the same was true for the transgender girls, whose brain activity and structure were also much more similar to the brain activity and structure of cisgender girls. Put simply, What this all means is that the brain structure and activity of an individual resembles more his or her gender identity rather than the organs or chromosomes that they were born with. For some, this new information about the gender spectrum seems like an unnecessary preoccupation about normalizing the non-normal. But I believe this is a privileged perspective, coming from individuals who may not have had to justify who they are and their right to exist to a greater society. And so we have Pride Month, and it is celebrated each year in the month of June to honor the 1969 Stonewall Uprising in Manhattan. The Stonewall Uprising was a tipping point for the gay liberation movement in the United States, and perhaps the whole world. This happened because of a violent raid of a gay bar, sparked a riot, and a force for change that called for gender equality. To this day, members of the LGBTQ community experience confusion, judgment, and discrimination. Of course, some would say we've come a long way. So is it still really necessary to celebrate Pride Month and call for gender equality? Well, let's hear from our Sheroes about their motivations for remaining steadfast as they continue to be part of the STEM community and also call for better representation of the LGBTQ community.
Hi science fans, I'm Anne Agu and I'm a research associate under the Practical Genomics Laboratory at De La Salle University.
Hi science fans, I am Kenneth J. Solis. You can call me Kenneth, or for my students call me Sir Ken, Sir Kenneth, Sir Solis. And for my mom, she calls me Anak. I am an educator, a researcher, and a student.
Hello science fans, I'm Bismark Oliver Lemana, and I'm currently a PhD student and a former faculty of the DLSC Biology Department, and I'm interested in plant systematics.
To get the ball rolling, let's first find out how our Sheroes got interested in the field of STEM.
When I was in high school, I really loved math. So whenever I answer college application forms, I always put there, yes, math or applied mathematics. But there's a part of me that I want to be a medical doctor, so I changed my program in biological sciences, but it's in education. And while doing it, I was very into doing experiments. I love field works. So I opt not to become a doctor, and then now I'm teaching, and then I also do research in De La Salle University.
Well, I had an early inclination to nature as a kid, and I had always been fascinated with something of the peculiar and the weird, the things that are happening in the wild, both the flora and the fauna. So unique mechanisms of organisms in order to defend or hunt for themselves, how poisons, venoms, and toxins work, and diseases known to man. The weirder, the rarer, the more interesting it gets are some of my curiosities that had led me into studying biology as my field.
All my life I've wanted to be a scientist, and it was just a matter of which field I wanted to specialize in. Ultimately, the decision to pursue biochemistry in my undergrad was from a desire to understand how exactly genetic mutations influence our development. I lost a sibling to genetics. They only lived for a day. Complications in lung and heart development, the doctor said. Mutation in chromosome 10, the lab results said, and I figured that was the reason why. I wanted to understand how that happened. How could something so little make that drastic of a change?
STEM truly is a very enticing field, but interest in it will only go so far. So I wonder, what could have led our Sheroes to stay committed and continue doing research or their studies in the field of STEM here in the Philippines?
But as I started working, I realized that there was so much more to research than the prestige of publishing papers or making mind-blowing discoveries. I realized that you don't have to have a lot of papers to make a name for yourself. You don't have to study something so grand to make an impact. STEM is all about making the world a better place. It's about helping society with the problems that they're facing in their world or in their lives. It's about uncovering the secrets of the world and everything beyond it. There are so many things in this country that we can do, and it's just a matter of getting to them. And that, honestly, that's what keeps me going right now.
First, as an educator, it makes my heart much happier, and it's a fulfillment to teach here, seeing my students achieving their dream. And as a researcher, helping crab farmers, giving them solutions to their problems. It is a responsibility to give them knowledge or enough knowledge on how to do things right, validating local practices backed up with science. And to be honest, here in the Philippines, we need more scientists to help more people.
Now, back in the day, I thought the prestige of getting a degree abroad is equivalent to one's success. And I learned that that is not actually true in most cases. Even with the technological advancements, foreign scientists would collaborate in order to speed up their research output and then move on to the next research endeavor. Now, I think this is one of the things that needs to be improved in our country. So, having a more collaborative and integrated research perspectives in our own scientists and STEM people, I think we will be able to untap the rich biodiversity that we have and unravel this potential. And therefore, this is a dream that I'd like to realize in the country.
Doing STEM research across time and location certainly has its difficulties, and this can even be confounded by societal conditions. All our Sheroes for today are part of the LGBTQ plus community, and I wonder how the experience was for them, and why is it important for us to continue the call for better representation of the LGBTQ plus community in the Philippine STEM fields.
I believe that regardless of sex, preference, race, etc., everyone is equally entitled to pursue their goals as long as it is for the better good. As gender diversity is being recognized better and better with time, our country will hopefully soon catch up. And knowing that STEM does not discriminate genders or any classifications that we have for humans, a lot more of the LGBTQ plus people might be able to find themselves suited to this track and be able to establish their own niche outside what we commonly known as the gender stereotypes.
In our line of work, I think communication and maintaining a network of people is important. But in trying to establish a good working relationship with these people, we may end up hiding parts of ourselves, specifically our soji, in fear that it'll affect things. We may fear that our identities will end up being the only defining trait that the other people will look at, and ignore our professional output completely as a result of whatever biases they may have against this part of ourselves. On top of the pressure to perform well, to produce results in this field, there is also the internal pressure of having to put on a persona of quote-unquote normalcy in order to fit in. Representation, more specifically visibility of the LGBTQ plus community in STEM spaces, will pave the way for the development of inclusivity in the field. More importantly, especially for the youth, I think it's all about showing others that they're not alone, that there's an entire spectrum of people out there in STEM, or in any field really.
For me, diversity and equality is very important in the fields naman. To us, acknowledgement, efforts and contribution are what we want to be seen in this field, to stand out. We don't want to overshadow others, but we want to be known as well in our own different fields. And that is what we want, to have an equality what others have.
Doing anything of value is certainly never easy, but it is worth all the blood, sweat, and tears. So, what could be the most fulfilling aspects of continuing research in the STEM fields as a member of the LGBTQ plus community?
In general, being a part of STEM has allowed me to experience things I never would have imagined I could. It allowed me to meet people from all walks of life, and through the work we've been doing at the Practical Genomics Lab, I felt that I was contributing to something that would help a lot of people. And honestly, that's more than enough for me as a scientist in the Philippines. Conversely, being a non-binary scientist in the Philippines, I think that just by being here, I can help the visibility of the LGBTQ plus community in STEM. as well as helping and spreading awareness to what exactly can be done in order to make working environments in STEM more welcoming. And in doing so, perhaps we will be able to move a bit closer to the goal of inclusivity that the community needs.
Pride Month is not all about who we are. Pride Month is all about promotion of self-affirmation, dignity, and increasing visibility or who are the communities. Giving much effort or adding more contribution to science gives us an edge to the community. It's all about accepting it. It's all about knowing what we are here for.
As a STEM teacher, I get to help some of my LGBTQ plus former students in their professional and even sometimes their personal concerns. Now, a lot of these young people are too afraid of being judged, so knowing that someone within the same community will be there to listen to them will take away this fear, thus making them more comfortable, allowing them to be able to speak up and assert themselves better. And finally, the fulfilling part is when I see them move towards their path of success.
We need more people in STEM, and we need better representation of all genders in STEM, as there is greater strength with greater diversity. So let's hear one more time from our Sheroes about their message to young Filipinos who are considering to be part of the wonderful world of STEM.
It sounds cliche, but STEM for me is one of the community that accepts me for being who I am. And contributing to STEM creates safe spaces for others. And I invite you to enter STEM because if this is what your passion or calling, join us.
To all young Filipinos, every unanswered question, even from the perspective of an expert, or even after doing some extensive literature review, will always be a chance and an opportunity to unravel possibly novel discoveries. So feed your curiosity and never, ever be afraid to ask questions and try to seek answers. And with that, thank you.
2 things. 1, do not let your past define you. From experience, being not one of the smartest people in the room, I had a lot of doubts in continuing research. But through the whirlwind of things that I've done, the people I've met, the experiments I've performed, I'm still here, somehow. Remember that there will always be opportunities to get into STEM, and if you can't find one, go make one. 2, don't let your fears dictate your future. Science is all about taking risks, and if the thought of making a gamble makes you scared, it's okay. I know how hard it is to move forward despite all the doubts and insecurities that you might have. Try to think of the reason you want to get into STEM. Hold on to it, and let it drive you and push you to take the first step.
Thank you so much to our Sheroes for sharing with us your time, your experiences, and for helping empower fellow Filipinos in the field of STEM, regardless of gender identity. It would be amazing to get a glimpse of what it's like for a STEM community, even a global community in the future, with gender equality and representation across the spectrum. To our viewers, I hope you were able to learn something from our special video for today. And if you did, I hope you can give this video a thumbs up and also subscribe to our channel. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, please don't hesitate to message me, your resident Filipino scientist, in the comments section below. Thank you very much, and see you around!